1. The extraordinary among us. What if you think differently from 99% of people? Imagine walking through a crowded street. Thousands of faces pass by, each harboring a universe of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. Now consider this. Among those thousands, only a handful experience reality in ways so rare, so fundamentally different, that they represent less than 1% of humanity. These are the individuals with the world's rarest personality types. What makes someone truly rare? Is it simply statistical scarcity, or something more profound about how they navigate existence? Today, we'll journey into the hidden worlds of the most uncommon personalities on Earth. Picture yourself as one of these rare individuals for a moment. How would you feel, knowing your natural way of processing the world is shared by so few? Would it be a burden of isolation, or a gift of unique perspective? 2. Beyond the 16. Understanding. Personality complexity. Before diving into the rarest types, we must first understand that personality exists beyond simple categorization. While frameworks like the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator have given us a vocabulary to discuss personality differences, human complexity extends far beyond 16 neat boxes. Personality represents the intersection of genetics, environment, cultural context, and lived experience. It's fluid, adaptive, and multidimensional. As Carl Jung himself noted, in each of us there is another whom we do not know. The rarest personalities often exist at the convergence of unusual traits that typically don't appear together. The study of personality began thousands of years ago. Hippocrates proposed the four humours in 460 BCE. Galen expanded this into the four temperaments around 170 CE. But modern personality psychology truly emerged through the work of theorists like Jung, Isabel Briggs, Myers, Catherine Cook Briggs, and later researchers who brought empirical rigor to the field. What makes rare personality types so fascinating isn't just their statistical scarcity. It's the unique perspectives they bring to our collective understanding of consciousness itself. 3. INFJ, the enigmatic counselor. The INFJ personality type represents less than 1.5% of the population, making it statistically the rarest in the Myers-Briggs framework. INFJs combine introverted intuition with extroverted feeling in a way that creates a unique paradox. They're deeply private, yet intensely focused on others' emotional well-being. Consider the experience of an INFJ. They often report feeling like eternal outsiders, with an uncanny ability to understand others, despite never quite feeling understood themselves. They experience what psychologists call the door slam, a phenomenon where, after enduring emotional harm beyond a threshold, they completely cut off relationships with remarkable finality. What drives this rare personality? INFJs possess an unusual combination of idealism and determinism. They see both the world that could be and the broken reality of what is. This creates a tension that fuels their quest for meaning. Historical figures likely to have been INFJs include Plato, whose allegory of the cave mirrors the INFJ's journey from perception to truth; Martin Luther King Jr., whose vision of justice transcended his time; and Carl Jung himself, who understood the transformative power of bringing the unconscious into consciousness. As research psychologist Dr. A.J. Drenth notes, INFJs are dreamers and idealists who can quickly become disillusioned with sensate reality. They experience a perpetual tug-of-war between idealism and reality, between hope and disappointment. What would it be like to constantly perceive patterns and connections that others miss? To feel responsible for healing emotional wounds you can see but others cannot? This is the daily reality of the INFJ. 4. INTI female. Rarity within. Rarity. While INTJs represent only about 2% of the population overall, INTJ females are particularly rare, comprising less than 0.5% of women. This creates a unique experience of double rarity, being both an uncommon personality type and an uncommon expression of gender within that type. The INTJ female often navigates a world where her natural tendencies toward analytical thinking, strategic planning, and emotional reserve conflict with societal expectations of femininity. A 2017 study from the University of Michigan found that women who display traditionally masculine personality traits like assertiveness and independence are still frequently penalized socially and professionally. Consider this paradox. INTJ women often excel in leadership positions due to their natural strategic abilities, yet face significant barriers to obtaining these positions, precisely because of the traits that would make them effective. Historical figures likely to have been INTJ women include Marie Curie, whose methodical brilliance led to the discovery of radioactivity, Ayn Rand, whose philosophical system prioritized reason above all else, and Ada Lovelace, the world's first computer programmer who saw potential in analytical engines beyond mere calculation. As philosopher Hannah Arendt, possibly an INTJ herself, wrote, "The sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil." This reflects the INTJ's focus on systems thinking over social convention. A perspective that can appear cold often arises from a deep commitment to objective truth. How might society differ if the analytical capabilities of INTJ women were more widely recognized and valued? What innovations and solutions might emerge from minds freed from gender expectations? 5. NT. Female, the commander in a gendered world. Similar to INTJ females, ENTJ women represent a statistical anomaly, making up less than 0.9% of women. ENTJs are natural leaders driven by efficiency, strategic vision, and decisive action. When these traits appear in women, they often create fascinating tensions between personal authenticity and social expectations. The ENTJ female frequently reports feeling misunderstood. Her direct communication style, comfort with authority, and focus on systems over individuals can be misinterpreted as aggression rather than leadership. A longitudinal study from Stanford Business School found that identical leadership behaviors were interpreted differently based solely on the gender of the leader. What distinguishes the ENTJ female experience is her relationship with power. While male ENTJs are often celebrated for their commanding presence, female ENTJs must navigate a more complex social landscape where power must sometimes be exercised indirectly. Historical ENTJ women likely include Margaret Thatcher, whose iron-willed determination transformed British politics; Indra Nooyi, former PepsiCo CEO known for strategic vision; and Queen Elizabeth I, whose pragmatic leadership prioritized England's interests above personal considerations. "If I had to define power in a word, it would be autonomy," said business leader Oprah Winfrey, possibly an ENTJ herself. This reflects the core ENTJ drive. Not control over others, but freedom to implement their vision without restriction. Consider this thought experiment. In a world without gender expectations, would ENTJ women be overrepresented in leadership positions due to their natural inclinations? Or would the current distribution of personality types shift as social pressures changed? 6. INTP female, the architect's paradox. INTP women make up approximately 1% of women, creating another interesting case of gender personality rarity. INTPs are characterized by their love of theoretical systems, analytical precision, and comfort with logical ambiguity. They typically value accuracy over emotional harmonia, trait that can conflict with gendered expectations. The INTP female often experiences what psychologists call cognitive dissonance between her natural tendencies toward objective analysis and societal expectations of emotional nurturing. While male INTPs may be forgiven for social awkwardness as absent-minded professors, female INTPs face different standards. What makes the INTP female experience unique is her relationship with knowledge. INTPs pursue understanding for its own sake, a pursuit that has historically been more accessible to men. Female INTPs often report feeling alienated both from typical female social groups and from male-dominated intellectual spaces. Historical figures likely to have been INTP women include Marie Curie, whose relentless pursuit of scientific truth transcended gender barriers; Mary Shelley, whose Frankenstein explored the ethical implications of technology; and Hannah Arendt, whose analysis of totalitarianism prioritized rational understanding over emotional response. As philosopher Simone de Beauvoir, possibly an INTP herself, wrote, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman." This reflects the INTP awareness that identity categories like gender are socially constructed systems that can be analyzed, deconstructed, and potentially reimagined. What insights might emerge from minds that naturally question fundamental assumptions about both technical systems and social constructs? How might INTP women uniquely contribute to fields requiring both analytical rigor and creative reconceptualization? 7. NTP female, the debater in disguise. ENTP women represent approximately 1.8% of women, creating another interesting gender personality intersection. ENTPs are characterized by their love of intellectual debate, conceptual connections, and comfort with challenging established ideas. They typically value innovative thinking over adherence to tradition, traits that can create interesting tensions with gendered expectations. The ENTP female often navigates a double standard. Behaviors considered confident or intellectually rigorous in men may be labeled as argumentative or difficult in women. Research from the Harvard Kennedy School found that women in negotiations face backlash for the same assertive behaviors that benefit men. What distinguishes the ENTP female experience is her relationship with intellectual exploration. ENTPs naturally question authority and established systems behaviors that historically have been less socially rewarded in women than men. Historical figures likely to have been ENTP women include Elizabeth I of England, whose strategic flexibility allowed her to outmaneuver political opponents; Marie Antoinette, whose unconventional approach to court life challenged traditions; and Eleanor Roosevelt, who reimagined the role of First Lady through intellectual engagement with policy. Well-behaved women seldom make history, wrote historian Laurel Thatcher Ulrich, possibly an ENTP herself. This captures the ENTP woman's dilemma. Their natural tendency to challenge systems often places them at odds with gendered expectations of compliance. Consider this question. How might discourse in fields like philosophy, politics, and science differ if ENTP women's natural debating style was equally valued as their male counterparts? What invisible assumptions might be challenged? 8. INTJ and INTP variants, the systematizers. Beyond gender differences, certain cognitive configurations within personality types create additional rarity. For instance, INTJs and INTPs with extremely high systematizing quotients, SQ, and low empathizing quotients, EQ, represent particularly rare subtypes. These individuals often found in fields like theoretical physics, pure mathematics, and computer science process information in ways that prioritize systematic understanding, sometimes at the expense of social intuition. Baron Cohen's research at Cambridge University suggests these cognitive profiles appear in less than 0.5% of the population. What makes these rare subtypes fascinating is their ability to perceive patterns invisible to most people. Their minds naturally organize information into coherent systems, allowing insights that others miss. Historical figures likely displaying these rare cognitive patterns include Isaac Newton, whose obsessive systematizing led to calculus; Kurt Gödel, whose incompleteness theorems revolutionized mathematical logic; and Paul Dirac, whose equations predicted antimatter before experimental evidence existed. "God used beautiful mathematics in creating the world," wrote Dirac, reflecting the deep aesthetic appreciation for systematic beauty that characterizes these rare minds. Consider this thought experiment. How might human knowledge advance differently if these rare systematizing minds were identified earlier and nurtured appropriately? What discoveries remain unmade because such minds lack proper development? 9. The ambivert phenomenon, beyond the binary. While introversion and extroversion form a central axis in most personality systems, some individuals exist in a rare middle space. True ambiverts, those who genuinely process information and energy in ways that bridge introversion and extroversion, represent approximately 7% of the population according to research from Adam Grant at Wharton. Unlike those who simply adapt behaviors situationally, learned ambiversion, natural ambiverts process social and solitary experiences with equal comfort. This creates fascinating cognitive flexibility relatively rare in humans. What makes true ambiversion interesting is not merely balance between social and solitary preferences, but the underlying cognitive adaptability it represents. True ambiverts often report the ability to shift processing styles depending on context, a valuable but uncommon trait. Historical figures displaying ambivert characteristics likely include Barack Obama, whose contemplative decision-making combined with social charisma defies simple categorization; Leonardo da Vinci, whose scientific observations and social networking occurred with equal facility; and Eleanor Roosevelt, who balanced deeply reflective writing with tireless public engagement. The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function, wrote F. Scott Fitzgerald. This aptly describes the ambivert's cognitive flexibility. How might organizations function differently if they recognized ambiversion as a distinct cognitive style rather than merely a midpoint between two preferences? What leadership approaches might emerge from minds comfortable with both reflection and engagement? 10. Highly sensitive persons, HSPs, the deep processors. Beyond traditional personality frameworks lies another rare group, highly sensitive persons, HSPs. First identified by psychologist Elaine Aron, HSPs represent approximately 15 to 20% of the population, but those with the strongest expression of the trait constitute only about 5%. HSPs process sensory information more deeply than the average person. Their nervous systems literally absorb more data from their environments, picking up subtleties others miss while becoming more easily overwhelmed by intense stimuli. What distinguishes the HSP experience is their depth of processing. While others might quickly categorize and move past sensory input, HSPs naturally analyze experiences more thoroughly, creating richer but sometimes overwhelming perceptual experiences. Historical figures likely to have been HSPs include Emily Dickinson, whose profound sensory awareness infused her poetry; Vincent van Gogh, whose paintings capture emotional and sensory experiences with unusual intensity; and Abraham Lincoln, whose deep emotional processing contributed to both his depression and his empathetic leadership. The truly creative mind in any field is no more than this: a human creature born abnormally, inhumanly sensitive, wrote Pearl S. Buck, capturing the double-edged nature of high sensitivity. What would society look like if it valued deep processing and sensory awareness as much as speed and efficiency? How might our approach to everything from education to workplace design change if we recognize the contributions of these naturally deep processors? 11. Twice exceptional, 2E individuals, cognitive paradoxes. Among the rarest psychological profiles are twice exceptional, 2E. Individuals, those who simultaneously possess extraordinary cognitive gifts and significant learning challenges. Representing less than 0.5% of the population, 2E individuals experience reality through fascinating cognitive contradictions. A 2E person might possess genius-level abstract reasoning alongside dyslexia or exceptional creative abilities with severe ADHD. These combinations create unique information processing styles rarely seen in the general population. What makes the 2E experience particularly interesting is navigating a world designed for neurotypical minds. Their exceptional strengths often mask their challenges, while their challenges obscure their gifts, creating what psychologists call the masking effect. Historical figures likely to have been 2E include Albert Einstein, whose revolutionary physics coexisted with delayed language development; Richard Branson, whose entrepreneurial vision operates alongside dyslexia; and Temple Grandin, whose autism provided unique insights into animal behavior while creating social challenges. "I wouldn't be where I am if I wasn't dyslexic," noted Richard Branson, highlighting how cognitive differences sometimes drive unique accomplishments. How might our understanding of human potential expand if we recognize that extraordinary gifts often coexist with significant challenges? What contributions remain unmade because society fails to accommodate these rare cognitive profiles? 12. The Big Five Rarities, Statistical Extremes. Moving beyond type-based systems, the empirically validated Big Five personality model, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, offers another lens for identifying statistical rarities. Individuals scoring at extreme ends, beyond 2 standard deviations from the mean, on multiple Big Five dimensions, represent statistical anomalies. For instance, someone scoring exceptionally high on both openness and conscientiousness, combining creative exploration with disciplined execution, appears in less than 0.7% of the population, according to research from Cambridge University. What makes these statistical outliers fascinating is how they challenge our understanding of personality structure. Certain trait combinations, like very high openness with very high conscientiousness, seem theoretically contradictory, yet create powerful capabilities when they coexist. Historical figures likely displaying rare Big Five combinations include Leonardo da Vinci, whose creative exploration, high openness, combined with meticulous detail orientation, high conscientiousness; Marie Curie, whose social reserve, low extroversion, paired with remarkable persistence, high conscientiousness; and Abraham Lincoln, whose empathetic concern, high agreeableness, coexisted with melancholic tendencies, high neuroticism. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man, wrote George Bernard Shaw. This captures how statistical personality outliers often drive innovation precisely because they process reality differently. If statistical personality outliers drive disproportionate social change, how might we better identify and support these rare cognitive profiles? What hidden potential exists at these statistical extremes? 13. Polymaths and multipotentialites, cross-domain thinkers. Another rare cognitive profile is the true polymath individuals with genuine expertise across multiple diverse domains. Unlike dilettantes who sample many fields superficially, true polymaths build deep knowledge across disparate areas, representing less than 0.1% of the population. Modern research from the University of Pennsylvania suggests true polymathic thinking involves distinctive cognitive patterns, fluid analogical reasoning, high openness to experience, and uncommon cognitive flexibility. These minds naturally cross boundaries that others perceive as fixed. What distinguishes the polymathic experience is their integrative perception. While specialists see deeper into single domains, polymaths recognize patterns across domains that specialists miss, creating innovations at the intersections. Historical polymaths include Leonardo da Vinci, whose work spanned art, engineering, anatomy, and natural science. Benjamin Franklin, who contributed to physics, politics, publishing, and diplomacy. And Ada Lovelace, who merged mathematical rigor with poetic imagination to envision computer capabilities before computers existed. Study the science of art. Study the art of science. Develop your senses. Learn how to see. Realize that everything connects to everything else, wrote Da Vinci, capturing the polymathic perspective. In an age of increasing specialization, what knowledge remains undiscovered because our educational and research systems discourage polymathic thinking? How might our understanding of complex problems like climate change benefit from minds trained to integrate across domains? 14. The integrative complexity spectrum. Nuanced thinkers. Cognitive psychologists have identified another rare trait: high integrative complexity, the ability to perceive and process multiple perspectives simultaneously while recognizing valid elements in opposing viewpoints. Research from Harvard University suggests only about 7% of people naturally operate at high levels of integrative complexity. Those with this rare cognitive style combine two key capabilities: differentiation, recognizing legitimate differences between perspectives, and integration, identifying conceptual connections between seemingly opposed views. This creates an unusual capacity for navigating conceptual complexity. What makes high integrative complexity remarkable is its rarity in public discourse. Studies of political rhetoric, media commentary, and even academic writing reveal that most communication occupies low to moderate complexity levels, making highly complex thinkers both valuable and often misunderstood. Historical figures likely displaying high integrative complexity include Isaiah Berlin, whose fox and hedgehog framework itself demonstrates complex thinking; Eleanor Roosevelt, whose human rights work balanced idealism with pragmatism; and Barack Obama, whose rhetoric and policy approaches often incorporated seemingly opposing perspectives. The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function, wrote F. Scott Fitzgerald, articulating the essence of integrative complexity. How might political discourse, media coverage, and policy development improve if we valued and cultivated high integrative complexity? What intractable problems might yield to more nuanced analysis? 15. Enneagram Type 5 W4, the iconoclastic investigator. Within the Enneagram personality system, certain type combinations display notable rarity. The Type 5 with a 4-wing, 5W4, sometimes called the Iconoclast, represents approximately 1.5% of the population, according to research from the Enneagram Institute. 5W4s combine the Type 5's analytical detachment and knowledge-seeking with the Type 4's emotional depth and aesthetic sensitivity. This creates a fascinating cognitive structure where objective analysis meets subjective experience. Individuals who simultaneously seek to understand systems while maintaining an awareness of their own distinctive perspective. What makes the 5W4 experience unique is their relationship with both information and identity. While pure Type 5s might lose themselves in abstract knowledge, the 4-wing maintains awareness of how knowledge relates to personal meaning and aesthetic value. Historical figures likely to have been 5W4S include Friedrich Nietzsche, whose analytical philosophy remained deeply personal, Emily Dickinson, whose precise observations carried profound emotional weight, and Stanley Kubrick, whose technical mastery served deep exploration of human psychology. "I'm not interested in preserving the status quo. I want to overthrow it," said Nietzsche, reflecting the 5W4's unusual combination of analytical insight and willingness to challenge established systems. How might fields like science, mathematics, and technology develop differently if they equally valued the 5W4's integration of analytical rigor with subjective meaning? What discoveries require both systematic analysis and aesthetic sensitivity? 16. Enneagram Type 4W5, the contemplative artist. Continuing with rare Enneagram configurations, the Type 4 with a 5-wing, 4W5, sometimes called the Bohemian, represents approximately 1.8% of the population, according to research from the Enneagram Institute. 4W5S combine the Type 4's emotional depth and authentic self-expression with the Type 5's analytical detachment and conceptual thinking. This creates a cognitive structure where subjective experience meets objective analysis. Individuals who deeply feel while simultaneously maintaining intellectual perspective on their emotions. What distinguishes the 4W5 experience is their relationship with both emotion and analysis. While pure Type 4S might be consumed by emotional experiences, the 5-wing provides analytical containment that transforms raw feeling into considered expression. Historical figures likely to have been 4W5S include Franz Kafka, whose deeply personal narratives explored abstract concepts, Virginia Woolf, whose stream of consciousness technique balanced emotional intensity with intellectual insight, and Frida Kahlo, whose self-portraits combined personal suffering with anthropological documentation. "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become," wrote Carl Jung, possibly a 4W5 himself, capturing their integration of emotional experience with conscious analysis. How might our understanding of human consciousness expand if we valued the 4W5's integration of emotional depth with conceptual thinking? What aspects of human experience remain unexplored because we typically separate feeling from analysis? 17. Enneagram Type 8W9, the diplomatic challenger. Among the rarest Enneagram types is the Type 8, with a 9-wing, 8W9, sometimes called the bear, representing approximately 1.7% of the population, according to the Enneagram Institute's research. 8W9S combine the Type 8's assertiveness and desire for control with the Type 9's peacemaking and inclusive perspective. This creates an unusual power dynamic, strength that seeks harmony rather than domination. Unlike the more confrontational 8W7, the 8W9 represents power in service of stability. What makes the 8W9 experience unique is their relationship with both power and peace. While pure Type 8S might seek control through confrontation, the 9-wing modifies this drive with a genuine desire for harmony, creating leaders who protect rather than dominate. Historical figures likely to have been 8W9S include Abraham Lincoln, whose strength served preservation rather than conquest, Nelson Mandela, whose formidable presence ultimately sought reconciliation, and Eleanor Roosevelt, whose assertiveness advanced inclusive ideals. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power, said Lincoln, reflecting the 8W9's awareness that true strength serves something beyond itself. How might leadership in politics, business, and other spheres transform if it embodied the 8W9's integration of strength with harmony? What intractable conflicts might yield to power deployed in service of peace rather than domination? 18. Enneagram Type 9 W1, the Idealistic Peacemaker. Continuing our exploration of rare Enneagram types, the Type 9 with a 1 wing, 9W1, sometimes called the Dreamer, represents approximately 1.9% of the population according to the Enneagram Institute. 9W1s combine the Type 9's desire for harmony and inclusion with the Type 1's ethical clarity and idealism. This creates an interesting tension between accepting things as they are 9 and seeing how they should be. 1. Individuals who dream of ideal harmony while acknowledging present reality. What distinguishes the 9W1 experience is their relationship with both acceptance and improvement. While pure Type 9s might seek peace through accommodation, the 1 wing adds a principled dimension that envisions how harmony could be perfected. Historical figures likely to have been 9W1s include Jane Addams, whose settlement house work balanced pragmatic service with social idealism; Jimmy Carter, whose diplomatic efforts combined realistic assessment with ethical vision; and Fred Rogers, whose gentle presence conveyed both acceptance and moral clarity. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers." "You will always find people who are helping," said Rogers, reflecting the 9W1's focus on finding goodness amid difficulty. How might our approach to conflict resolution change if guided by the 9W1's integration of realistic acceptance with principled vision? What apparently irreconcilable differences might yield to this rare combination of harmony-seeking and idealism? 19. Type combinations across systems, the rarest of the rare. Beyond individual typing systems lie intersections between systems creating statistical rarities through combination. For instance, an INFJ HSP 5W4 with high integrative complexity would represent less than 0.01% of the population based on the multiplicative probability of these independent traits. These multi-system rare types experience reality through multiple overlapping uncommon lenses. Their internal processing combines several unusual perspectives simultaneously, creating cognitive structures almost unique to the individual. What makes these intersectional rarities fascinating is how they challenge single-system understanding. A person isn't simply an INFJ or an HSP or a 5W4. Their experience emerges from the interaction between these frameworks, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. Historical figures likely displaying these rare intersectional types include Søren Kierkegaard, possibly INFJ 4W5 HSP, whose philosophical work exhibited sensitive depth, structured intuition, and individualistic analysis; Nikola Tesla, possibly INTJ 5W4 HSP, whose scientific insights combined systematic thinking with sensory sensitivity; and Emily Dickinson, possibly INFP 4W5 HSP, whose poetry reflected deep introversion, emotional authenticity, and sensory awareness. Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail, wrote Ralph Waldo Emerson, capturing how these intersectional rarities often chart entirely new cognitive territories. What might we learn about human potential by studying these statistical outliers who experience consciousness through multiple rare lenses simultaneously? What capabilities emerge at these unusual intersections? 20. Synthesizers and systems, thinkers, the meta, cognitive rarities. Certain individuals possess rare metacognitive abilities, the capacity to think effectively about thinking itself. Research from Harvard's Center for Complex Systems suggests that high-level systems thinkers capable of recognizing emergent patterns across domains represent less than 1.2% of the population. These rare minds naturally perceive connections between ostensibly unrelated systems. They recognize isomorphism, structural similarities between apparently different domains, allowing them to transfer insights across boundaries that appear impermeable to others. What distinguishes these metacognitive rarities is their ability to operate at higher orders of abstraction without losing concrete applicability. They can move fluidly between specific instances and general principles, recognizing how each informs the other. Historical figures likely displaying these rare metacognitive abilities include Gregory Bateson, whose work connected anthropology, cybernetics, and ecology through meta-patterns; Buckminster Fuller, whose synergetic approach integrated architecture, engineering, and natural systems; and Ada Lovelace, whose notes on Babbage's analytical engine recognized computing patterns beyond calculation. "The pattern which connects is a meta-pattern," wrote Bateson, articulating the essence of these rare minds that perceive connections across disparate domains. How might our approach to complex challenges like climate change, poverty, or pandemic response improve if guided by these rare synthesizing minds? What solutions remain undiscovered because we segregate knowledge into isolated domains? 21. Cognitive styles and intelligence types, beyond IQ. Moving beyond personality frameworks, certain cognitive styles represent statistical rarities. Research from Howard Gardner and Robert Sternberg suggests that individuals with specific multiple intelligence profiles, particularly those with unusual combinations of strengths, represent another dimension of psychological rarity. For instance, individuals with exceptional logical, mathematical, and musical rhythmic abilities but average verbal capabilities experience reality through distinctive cognitive patterns. They may perceive mathematical structures in music or musical patterns in logical systems that others miss entirely. What makes these rare cognitive configurations noteworthy is how they challenge unidimensional models of intelligence. Someone isn't simply smart or not smart. Their mind may excel in domains invisible to traditional measurement while struggling in areas typically prioritized. Historical figures likely displaying rare multiple intelligence profiles include Einstein, strong logical, mathematical, and musical intelligence, who played violin while developing physics theories; Temple Grandin, exceptional visual spatial intelligence with social challenges, whose thinking in pictures revolutionized livestock facility design; and Leonardo da Vinci, balanced excellence across multiple intelligences, whose work integrated visual, logical, and naturalistic understanding. "If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid," wrote Albert Einstein, highlighting how rare cognitive profiles often go unrecognized in standardized systems. How might education transform if it recognized and cultivated these rare cognitive configurations? What human potential remains untapped because our systems primarily reward certain intelligence types while neglecting others? 22. Sensory processing sensitivity, the highly sensitive person. Diving deeper into the neurobiological basis of rare personality types, we encounter sensory processing sensitivity, a trait identified by psychologist Elaine Aron that affects approximately 15 to 20% of the population, with the most pronounced expressions appearing in just 5%. Unlike learned behavioral patterns, this trait involves fundamental differences in how sensory information is processed at the neurological level. Research using fMRI imaging shows that HSP brains actually activate different neural networks when processing identical stimuli compared to non-HSP brains. What distinguishes the HSP experience neurologically is greater activation in regions associated with awareness, empathy, and attention to subtlety, particularly the anterior cingulate and insula. This creates perceptual experiences qualitatively different from the norm. Historical figures likely exhibiting high sensitivity include Marcel Proust, whose literature captures sensory details with extraordinary precision, Jane Goodall, whose observational sensitivity revealed primate behavior others missed, and Franz Kafka, whose heightened awareness of alienation informed his writing. The truly creative mind in any field is no more than this: a human creature born abnormally, inhumanly sensitive, wrote Pearl S. Buck, herself likely an HSP, capturing how sensitivity creates both vulnerability and capability. If consciousness fundamentally differs between HSP and non-HSP neurological structures, what aspects of reality might be perceptible to one group but invisible to the other? What complementary insights might emerge from these different processing styles? 23. Synesthesia, cross-modal consciousness. Among the rarest neurological variations is synesthesia, condition where stimulation in one sensory pathway automatically triggers experiences in another. Research from the University of California suggests genuine synesthesia occurs in approximately 4% of the population, with certain types appearing in less than 1%. Unlike metaphorical associations, true synesthesia involves involuntary cross-activation between brain regions that typically function independently. For synesthetes, numbers might have intrinsic colors, sounds might produce tactile sensations, or words might have specific taste-creating perceptual experiences radically different from typical consciousness. What makes the synesthetic experience fascinating is its consistency and automaticity. These aren't chosen associations but hardwired perceptual realities that remain stable throughout life. A synesthete who perceives the number 7 as green will always experience it that way. Historical figures likely experiencing synesthesia include composer Franz Liszt, who famously instructed orchestra members to play colors. "A little bluer, please." Painter Wassily Kandinsky, whose abstract art translated musical experiences into visual form. And physicist Richard Feynman, who reported seeing colored equations. "When I hear music, I see colors," explained Duke Ellington, describing his synesthetic experience. "I see colors as waves, or I see notes as colors." How might our understanding of consciousness expand if we recognize that people literally perceive reality through different sensory mechanisms? What insights might synesthetes offer about connections between domains that appear separate to typical perception? 24. The tetrachromat phenomenon, expanded color reality. Beyond personality and cognitive variations lies an even rarer perceptual difference. Tetrachromasia, genetic variation that allows certain individuals, exclusively women, to perceive approximately 100 million colors compared to the typical 1 million. Research suggests true tetrachromacy occurs in approximately 1 to 2% of women, or less than 1% of the total population. Unlike standard trichromatic vision with 3 types of cone cells, tetrachromats possess 4 functional types of retinal cones, creating perceptual experiences of color depth and differentiation inaccessible to the majority of humans. What distinguishes the tetrachromat experience is not merely seeing more colors, but experiencing color relationships invisible to others. Where typical vision perceives a single shade, the tetrachromat may see complex color interactions and subtleties that literally don't exist for trichromatic perception. Historical figures who may have been tetrachromats include Georgia O'Keeffe, whose paintings display extraordinary color subtlety, Mary Cassatt, whose work features unusual color relationships, and Hildegard von Bingen, whose illuminated manuscripts show remarkable color complexity. "I found I could say things with color and shapes that I couldn't say any other way, things I had no words for," explained O'Keeffe, possibly articulating the tetrachromat's expanded color reality. If consciousness is partly constructed from sensory input, How might the Tetrachromats worldview differ from typical experience? What aspects of reality might they perceive that remain invisible to the majority of humanity? 25. The absolute pitch phenomenon, auditory rarities. Among the rarest perceptual differences is absolute pitch, commonly called perfect pitch, the ability to identify or reproduce any musical note without external reference. Research from the University of California suggests genuine absolute pitch occurs in approximately 1 in 10,000 people in Western populations, though rates vary culturally. Unlike relative pitch, common among musicians, absolute pitch involves fundamentally different auditory processing. For those with this rare ability, musical notes have intrinsic, immediately recognizable identities, similar to how most people recognize colors without comparison. What distinguishes the absolute pitch experience is the automatic, effortless nature of pitch recognition. These individuals don't calculate intervals or compare notes. They directly perceive pitch identity as an inherent property of sound, creating a qualitatively different auditory reality. Historical figures known to possess absolute pitch include Mozart, who could transcribe complex music after a single hearing, Ella Fitzgerald, whose precise vocal reproduction demonstrated extraordinary pitch memory, and Beethoven, who continued composing sophisticated music after losing his hearing by drawing on internal absolute pitch. To play a wrong note is insignificant. To play without passion is inexcusable, said Beethoven, highlighting how even with absolute technical precision, emotional expression remained paramount. If consciousness partly emerges from how we process sensory information, how might the absolute pitch possessor's experience of reality differ from typical perception? What aspects of sound structure might be immediately obvious to them while remaining hidden to others? 26. Hyperphantasia, the vivid images. Another rare cognitive variation is hyperphantasia, exceptionally vivid mental imagery that approaches or matches the intensity of actual perception. Research from the University of Exeter suggests this pronounced ability occurs in approximately 2.5% of the population. Unlike average mental imagery, hyperphantasia involves extraordinarily detailed, controlled visualization that can recreate complex sensory experiences internally. For these individuals, imagined scenes aren't vague approximations, but richly detailed mental environments that can be inspected and manipulated. What makes the hyperphantasic experience remarkable is its sensory richness. These individuals don't merely think about an apple, they can see its precise coloration, feel its texture, and taste its flavor through internal simulation that approaches perceptual reality. Historical figures likely experiencing hyperphantasia include Tesla, who reportedly could visualize and test machinery in his mind with such precision that physical prototypes matched his mental models, Nabokov, whose literature features extraordinarily detailed sensory descriptions drawn from memory, and Einstein, whose thought experiments involved visualizing physical scenarios with remarkable clarity. "If I can't picture it, I can't understand it," Einstein reportedly said, suggesting the central role vivid mental imagery played in his cognitive processes. How might education, creative work, and problem-solving transform if we better understood and cultivated hyperphantasic abilities? What potential remains untapped because our systems rarely recognize or develop this rare cognitive gift? 27. Aphantasia, the mind's eye blind. In stark contrast to hyperphantasia stands another rare cognitive variation, aphantasia, the complete absence of voluntary visual imagery. Research suggests total aphantasia occurs in approximately 2 to 3% of the population. Unlike typical mental imagery or hyperphantasia, aphantasia involves an inability to generate visual images voluntarily. For these individuals, picturing something, means conceptual understanding without sensory simulation, creating fundamentally different internal experiences. What distinguishes the aphantasic experience is their alternative cognitive strategies. Without visual imagery, these individuals often develop enhanced conceptual, spatial, or semantic processing, thinking in words, abstract concepts, or felt knowledge rather than mental pictures. Historical figures likely experiencing aphantasia include philosopher Daniel Dennett, who first discovered his aphantasia in his 60s, artist Glenn Keane, who created iconic Disney characters without mental imagery, and cognitive scientist Temple Grandin, who thinks in concrete images rather than imagined visualizations. I know what a beach is. I know facts about it. I know what it's made of. I know activities that happen there, but I can't conjure up an image of it. Explained Ed Catmull, co-founder of Pixar Animation Studios and aphantasic. If some minds operate without imagery while others function with hyper-realistic internal visualization, what does this reveal about the diversity of human consciousness? What cognitive strengths might emerge specifically because of aphantasia rather than despite it? 28. Hyperphantasia, extraordinary autobiographical memory. Among the rarest documented cognitive variations is hyperphantasia, also known as highly superior autobiographical memory, HSAM, the ability to recall personal experiences and events with extraordinary detail and accuracy. Research suggests this condition affects approximately 60 people worldwide, making it one of the rarest cognitive profiles known to science. Unlike typical autobiographical memory or trained memory techniques, hyperphantasia involves automatic, effortless, and highly detailed recall of personal experiences. These individuals can often recall what happened on any given date in their lives, complete with emotional states, weather conditions, and seemingly trivial details most would forget within days. What makes the hyperphantastic experience fascinating is its involuntary nature. These individuals don't choose to remember everything they cannot forget. Their consciousness includes constant access to previous experiences, creating a different relationship with time and identity than typical memory allows. Known individuals with confirmed hyperphantasia include Jill Price, the first person scientifically documented with the condition; actress Marilu Henner, one of only a few dozen people globally diagnosed with HSAM; and Brad Williams, who can recall nearly every day of his life since age 14. My memory is like a movie screen, constantly playing, explained Price. I walk through my life with this burden, this running movie that never stops. How might our understanding of human memory transform if we recognize the extreme variation between hyperphantastic recall and typical forgetting? What would it mean for concepts of identity if most of us experience only fragments of our past while others relive it continuously? 29. Alexithymia, emotion without recognition. Another intriguing cognitive variation is alexithymia, difficulty identifying and describing one's own emotional states. Research suggests pronounced alexithymia affects approximately 10% of the population, with severe cases representing about 1 to 2%. Unlike emotional suppression or selective inattention, alexithymia involves genuine difficulty recognizing internal emotional states. These individuals experience physiological responses to emotions, but struggle to categorize or articulate what they're feeling, creating a fundamentally different relationship with emotional experience. What distinguishes the alexithymic experience is the disconnect between physical sensation and emotional labeling. While others automatically translate bodily sensations into emotional categories, I feel sad, those with alexithymia experience the physical components of emotion without automatic cognitive interpretation. Historical figures possibly experiencing alexithymia include economist Alan Greenspan, known for his emotionally flat presentation despite high intelligence; writer Ernest Hemingway, whose terse prose style avoided direct emotional description, and scientist Marie Curie, described by contemporaries as emotionally reserved yet clearly passionate about her work. The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance. It is the illusion of knowledge, said historian Daniel Boorstin, capturing how alexithymia creates uncertainty about one's own emotional states that others take for granted. What might we learn about the relationship between physical sensation, emotional labeling, and consciousness by studying minds that experience these components separately? How might our understanding of emotional intelligence expand by recognizing this alternative processing style? 30. The anomalous experience researcher, the meta-aware. Our final rare personality explores those with pronounced meta-awareness individuals who not only experience unusual cognitive states, but can analyze them with exceptional clarity. Research from the University of California suggests this combination of anomalous experience with analytical awareness appears in less than 0.5% of the population. Unlike those who simply have unusual experiences, or those who analyze from external perspectives, these individuals combine first-person abnormal cognitive states with third-person analytical capacity, creating unique windows into alternative forms of consciousness. What makes these meta-aware individuals valuable is their ability to bridge experiential and analytical understanding. They don't merely report unusual states, but can systematically explore, document, and contextualize them, offering insights inaccessible through either objective measurement or subjective report alone. Historical figures demonstrating this rare combination include William James, who analyzed his own mystical experiences through psychological frameworks; Oliver Sacks, whose neurological conditions informed his scientific understanding; and Aldous Huxley, who documented altered states with remarkable analytical precision. The aim of science is to seek the simplest explanations of complex facts. The aim of poetry is to state complex things simply, wrote Huxley, reflecting the integration of analytical and experiential understanding. How might our understanding of consciousness expand if we valued these rare individuals who combine anomalous experience with analytical rigor? What insights into human potential remain undiscovered because we typically separate subjective experience from objective analysis? 31. Intersections and implications, beyond categorization. As we conclude our exploration of the world's rarest personality types, we must acknowledge that true human complexity transcends all categorization systems. The rarest individuals often defy clean classification, precisely because their uniqueness emerges from intersections between multiple frameworks. The study of rare personalities ultimately reveals not just statistical anomalies but fundamental questions about consciousness itself. If minds can differ so dramatically in perception, cognition, emotion, and memory, what does this suggest about the nature of human experience? Perhaps the most profound implication is recognizing that consciousness is not a single phenomenon, but a spectrum of possibilities. Each rare personality type represents not merely a statistical outlier, but a unique window into alternative ways of being human, alternative ways of constructing reality from sensory input, memory, emotion, and thought. As neuroscientist David Eagleman notes, the brain is a team of rivals. This internal diversity exists not just between individuals but within them, creating complex personality structures that transcend simple categorization. What might human potential become if we truly honored neurodiversity, recognizing rare cognitive profiles not as disorders to be corrected, but as alternative operating systems offering unique capabilities? How might education, workplace design, and social structures transform if optimized for cognitive diversity rather than standardization? The ultimate value in studying these rare personalities lies not in mere categorization, but in expanding our conception of what consciousness can be. By understanding the full spectrum of human cognitive variation, we glimpse not just what we are, but what we might become. 32. Philosophical implications. The nature of identity. The existence of rare personality types raises profound philosophical questions about the nature of identity itself. If minds can differ so fundamentally in how they process reality, what constitutes the core of human selfhood? Traditional philosophical approaches to personal identity often assume shared cognitive foundations that, despite surface differences, minds operate similarly at fundamental levels. Yet the evidence of rare personality types challenges this assumption, suggesting consciousness itself may vary qualitatively between individuals. What makes this philosophical question urgent is its practical implications. If certain minds naturally process reality in fundamentally different ways, how should we approach concepts like education, workplace design, or even moral responsibility? Should we expect similar outputs from radically different processing systems? As philosopher Thomas Nagel famously asked in his essay, "What is it like to be a bat? How can we understand consciousness fundamentally different from our own?" The rare personality types we've explored suggest this question applies not just between species, but within humanity itself. "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled," wrote Plutarch, capturing how different minds may require entirely different approaches to development and understanding. If consciousness varies qualitatively between individuals, what might this suggest about the nature of reality itself? Is reality a single objective truth partially accessed by each mind, or might reality itself be partly constructed through these diverse cognitive processes? 33. Beyond statistical rarity, the value of difference. Throughout our exploration, we've focused on statistical rarity personality types and cognitive variations appearing in small percentages of the population. Yet rarity itself holds no inherent value. The significance of these unusual minds lies not in their scarcity, but in their unique contributions. History repeatedly demonstrates how rare cognitive profiles often drive disproportionate innovation. From Einstein's visual physics to Temple Grandin's livestock facility designs, unusual minds frequently perceive solutions invisible to more typical processing styles. Their value emerges not despite their difference but because of it. What makes this understanding crucial is its implication for how we approach neurodiversity. If rare cognitive profiles offer unique capabilities rather than merely representing deviation from a preferred norm, our social structures should seek to integrate rather than normalize these differences. As anthropologist Margaret Mead observed, if we are to achieve a richer culture, rich in contrasting values, we must recognize the whole gamut of human potentialities, and so weave a less arbitrary social fabric, one in which each diverse human gift will find a fitting place. How might human civilization advance if we designed systems to leverage the full spectrum of cognitive diversity rather than privileging certain processing styles? What problems remain unsolved precisely because we lack sufficient cognitive variation in our approach? The study of rare personalities ultimately reveals not just psychological categories, but a profound truth about human potential. Our greatest collective strength may lie not in our similarities, but in our differences. 34. The evolving landscape, personality in a changing world. As we conclude our exploration, we must consider how rare personality types interact with rapidly changing technological and social environments. Are certain rare cognitive profiles becoming more valuable in modern contexts? Are others finding new expression through digital environments? Evidence suggests that some historically disadvantaged rare types like deep introverts or highly sensitive persons may find new opportunities for contribution through remote work, digital communication, and environments they can control. Simultaneously, rare cognitive styles like systems thinking and cross-domain synthesis become increasingly valuable in addressing complex global challenges. What makes this evolution significant is how it might reshape our understanding of social adaptation. Throughout much of history, certain personality types were disadvantaged by environments optimized for different cognitive styles. As technological and social structures evolve, different cognitive profiles may find new advantages. As futurist Alvin Toffler noted, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. This capacity for cognitive flexibility may itself represent a rare trait becoming increasingly essential. How might our conception of rare personalities transform as society increasingly values cognitive diversity? What ancient human abilities once considered strange or useless might find new expression in emerging environments? The future of personality research lies not merely in cataloging differences, but in understanding how these differences create complementary capability, how the full spectrum of human cognitive variation might combine to address challenges no single processing style could solve alone. Conclusion: the infinite diversity of consciousness. We began our journey exploring statistically rare personality types, the INFJs, ENTJ females, 5W4S, and other uncommon profiles representing small percentages of humanity. Yet our exploration revealed something far more profound than statistical distributions. What emerged through our study of rare personalities is a glimpse of consciousness itself, not as a single phenomenon, but as a spectrum of possibilities. Each rare cognitive configuration represents not merely a data point, but a unique window into alternative ways of constructing reality from perception, memory, emotion, and thought. The ultimate significance of rare personality types lies not in their categorization, but in what they reveal about human potential. If minds can vary so dramatically in how they process identical, imputive consciousness itself can take such diverse forms, what might this suggest about our collective capabilities? As neurologist Oliver Sacks wrote, "In examining disease, we gain wisdom about anatomy and physiology and biology. In examining the person with disease, we gain wisdom about life." Similarly, by examining rare personalities, we gain insight not just into psychological categories, but into the fundamental nature of mind itself, its flexibility, its diversity, and its remarkable capacity to construct reality through wildly different, yet equally valid processes. Perhaps the most profound question emerging from our exploration is this: what might humanity accomplish if we truly honored the full spectrum of cognitive diversity, not merely tolerating difference, but actively cultivating the unique capabilities emerging from rare cognitive configurations? The rarest personality types ultimately teach us not just about psychological categories, but about the infinite diversity of consciousness itself, and the extraordinary potential that remains largely untapped within the full spectrum of human minds.